Let's get started. So today our webinar is about CAD and CAD design. Have you guys ever heard of CAD? C-A-D? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down. Never heard of it? That's okay. So CAD is a software that people use for 3D design. So that could be to 3D print objects. That could be for animation. It could be for video games. So CAD software is maybe not something that you've used, but it's definitely something that you've benefited from, that other people have used. So if you've ever played like a video game, or if you've watched an animated movie, probably someone was using CAD software for that. So first we're gonna go over our design challenge a little bit, then we're gonna talk about CAD, and then I'm actually gonna show you how you can use Tinker-CAD, which is a CAD software made for kids at home to take part in our design challenge. So the design challenge that we have today is really cool. So the challenge is to use Tinker-CAD, which again, I'm gonna show you how to do, to create something useful that you can use around the house, that you can use in your everyday life. And then what you can do is actually submit that challenge or submit that design to me, and I will 3D print it for you here at Sci-Tech. So let's look in a little more detail what I'm talking about. Okay. So here's our challenge. Design a 3D object using Tinker-CAD, which I'm going to show you how to do. Create something useful and practical with a unique design. And our entries are due all next week. So the 25th through the 29th, you'll have time to design that and then send it to me. And then I'll start printing it for you. So once I show you like exactly how Tinker-CAD works as well, you're gonna see that it's gonna be really easy for you to design something in that amount of time. So what do I mean when I'm talking about something useful, right? Like what does that really mean? Something that you need in your everyday life, what could that be? Well, let's look at some really cool examples that I found online. So these are all objects from a website called Thingiverse, which is a really popular website for 3D prints. This is the Telescopic Honeycomb pen holder. So what I like about this is obviously it's practical, right? You would use this every day to hold your pens. It serves a purpose, but it also looks really cool and it's a really cool design. Okay, let's look at another example. This is a super awesome plant clip. So again, it looks cool, but it's also kind of a simple design and it's something that someone needed and they went out, designed it, printed it, and then they get to use it for something purposeful. All right, let's look at another example. A key holder with a shelf. So again, another great example. This might just be something that you think every day in your life, I wish I had a key holder, I wish I had a little shelf or something like that. The great thing about having CAD software and having 3D printers, you can go out, design that, and then print that object for yourself. All right, another example, open-end wrench holder. Another great example of a really simple design, very functional. Also, it still looks very cool, it's very unique. So, you know, very practical, but it also has a very sleek, great design. So there's just a couple examples of slightly more advanced designs that people have made. Yours certainly does not have to be that advanced. It could be something really simple, but there's just a couple of good examples to start. I also have my own example. So get back on here, whoops. Okay, sorry, there we go. So here's the design that I made. So what I wanna do, hi Lachlan, hi, thank you for joining us. So the, I wanted to do the design challenge as well, right? I wanted to have an example. So I just went around my house and was like, what do I need? What's something that I'm missing here that instead of going out and buying or, you know, trying to make or something, what's something that I could design and 3D print? So I needed a flute stand, right? I have a flute, but I don't have a stand for it. So it's kind of, I just put it down somewhere or whatever. I wanted something where I could just put it on a holder, put it on a stand, and then it could sit there. So I wanted to design something that would work like that. So the first thing I did was I went online, I looked at pictures of flute stands. What does a flute stand look like, right? So I know I didn't bring my flute because I'm not at home, but if the base of the flute sits on here like this, right? And then it sticks up like that, and then it just keeps it from falling over, right? So I went on and looked at pictures of what that could look like. I got an idea for what my design could be. Then I actually sketched out my idea on paper, just kind of vaguely what I wanted to look like, what I wanted it, how big or small I wanted it to be. And then I went into my CAD software and I designed it. So I'm going to show you exactly how I designed this and show you how to use Tinkercad so that you can design your own object. Okay, looks like we've got Isabella joining us. Hi guys, thank you for joining us. So if you missed this, I just went over our CAD design challenge. So again, basically what that's gonna be is I'm gonna show you guys how to use Tinkercad, and then you'll be able to submit your designs to me, and I'll actually be able to print them for you, okay? So we're gonna showcase your designs on our Sci-Tech social media. It's a great opportunity to learn about CAD, learn about 3D design, and actually have your design come to life. So thumbs up or thumbs down. Have you guys ever used a 3D printer? Does anyone use a 3D printer? No? No? Okay, well that's awesome. This is a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit about it. Okay, so that is our challenge. Now let's go into learning a little bit more about CAD. So for those of you that missed talking about CAD in the beginning, let's see, let me share my screen here. So CAD software it stands for computer aided design, right? So it's basically when we use the computer to bring our 3D designs to life. It's basically like when you have an idea for a design, right? You might sketch it out on paper, but that's only 2D, right? That's only 2 dimensions. So when we use 3D design, that allows us to add that third dimension and truly bring our designs to life. Who uses CAD design? So like I said earlier, maybe you've never personally used it, but you've definitely seen something that was built using a CAD design, whether that's a physical object like this, or whether that was animation in a movie or a video game. So there's tons of people that use it. And there's also tons of different kinds of CAD software, from something really simple like Tinker-CAD, which I'm going to show you today, which is a design for kids to be able to use, to something a little more complex like Solid Edge, which is a little more advanced and is used by engineers and all kinds of different people. So there's tons of different options. And yeah, it's really fascinating world. So let's move on. Let me actually show you some examples of CAD design since we've been talking about it and now we have a good understanding of what it is. So let's look first at a more advanced option. So this is Solid Edge, which I was talking about just a second ago. This is a really great CAD software. As you can see, there's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot going on. There's all these different buttons. And when it renders our shape, when it kind of shows us what we're designing on the screen, it looks pretty advanced, right? Like you can kind of see the texture, you can see kind of how the light would hit this object. So this is my flute stand, basically designed in Solid Edge, because I wanted to show you sort of a more complex CAD software. But at the base level, all CAD software kind of tends to have similar features. So even though this one is a little more complex, you still have some of the just base features of using shapes and objects and changing their dimensions, changing their angles. And Solid Edge is really cool because you can do that in a lot of different ways, and you can be really precise. And there's just a lot of really cool features, like doing different angles and stuff like that. It's really, really cool, but that's for another webinar, right? Today we're gonna focus on how to use Tinkercad, but I wanted to show you that there's just a lot of different levels of CAD software, from something more basic to something a little more advanced like this, right? If you have an interest in CAD software, Tinker-CAD is a great place to start, but then you can kind of move on to other different types of CAD software. Okay, so let's get started with Tinker-CAD. And let me share my screen so you guys can see that. Okay, let's get started with Tinkercad. Okay, here we go. So now we're looking at Tinkercad, right? Everyone can see the Tinkercad homepage, right? Awesome. Okay, so this is my homepage, right? Tinkercad, the great thing about it is it's a website. So you don't have to download any software. You can just go to tinkercad.com. You can have your parents help you make an account, but it's free to make an account and it's really simple. And some of you might have already used this in school possibly, or seen this before, but it's super simple. So let's look at my flute stand design in Tinkercad so that we just get an idea of exactly what we're looking at. Pretty cool, right? So as you can see, like just looking at this interface, it's a lot simpler than what we just saw on Solid Edge, right? There's a lot less buttons, there's a lot less going on, which of course means we can't quite do as much, but there's still some really great features that we can create. Okay, so this is a finished product. Now I'm gonna show you how you can actually go in and create this. So let's go back to my dashboard and we're gonna create a new design. Okay, so when you open a design on Tinkercad, this is what it's gonna look like, okay? The first thing that I like to do is go down here to this bottom right corner, okay? And I like to change my snap grid. The snap grid basically affects like how you can move objects. I usually like to just turn that off because that's a little easier. The other thing I do is go to my edit grid button there. I change the units from millimeters to inches because it's just easier for me to think in terms of inches when I'm designing. I think that's the case for probably most of us here. And then that all looks good. You can also make your grid, which is basically your base plate that you're going to be building on, bigger if you want to, but we'll leave that for now. Okay, so now we can see this. We've got our grid. We've changed, we made our modifications. Everything looks good. The cool thing about Tinkercad, you see this box up here in the corner. You can rotate this to kind of see your shapes and see your grids from different perspectives. That's really helpful. So now let's get into actually building. So the great thing about Tinkercad, it's super user-friendly and everything is drag and drop. So on the right side over here, you can see all these very cool shapes, right? There we go. Okay, you can see all these great shapes. You can just click on it, drag it wherever you want it on your grid, and click again, and there it is, right? Now we can play with this, manipulate the size, do what we gotta do, right? So let's change the size of this cube, and let's, we'll just play around with it a little bit. So you can grab these corners and move them and change the size, or you can go in and type. So if I want this to be, instead of a 1x1, a 2x1 or 2x2, then I just change it like that. Super easy. You can also change the height. This little white box on the top, that will change the height. Can increase or decrease that. And you can also change the height in terms of where it's sitting on the plane. So if I want it to be sitting on top of something, right, I can move it up. I could shrink it below. I could even move the angle. So let's say I want this to be on its side a little bit. Can move that 20 degrees. Very cool. So there's all kinds of really easy ways to manipulate these objects and do cool stuff with them. And it's super easy. Again, it's all drag and drop. And the best way to learn is just kind of open it up and play with it and mess around and see what you can do. Another really, really awesome feature, which can kind of help your design turn out a little bit neater, a little bit more symmetrical, is the align feature. So let's take out a couple of shapes. Got a nice little rectangle or a cube and a cylinder here. If we select both of these objects, which we can do by just dragging our mouse across both of them, and then go up here to align, okay, which is this button right here at the top, then we have all these little dots appear, right? Kind of interesting. What those dots are showing you is how you can align these two objects at different areas of the grid. So if we align them in the middle here, they're going to meet in the middle, basically. That's simple. Let's say we want the cylinder to go into the middle of the cube, right? Then we align them here, and then we need to align them in the middle as well. Boom, there we go. Now our cylinder is in the perfect middle of the cube. So let's say we want that cylinder to actually be a hole in the tube. Like let's say we're making a cup or something like that, right? Then we would need a hole, right? We would need a way to cut out the shape. So the cool thing you can do is actually turn this shape into a hole space. So up here we have the color option, which is very cool as well. And we also have the space option. So now instead of taking up space in the middle of that cube, the cylinder is actually going to take away the space that's in that cube. And the way we do that is, again, change the shape to hole, and then we select both again and come up here to the group option and group them. There we go. And now we have a hole that is perfectly in the middle of our cube there. Awesome. Very cool. So that's a really easy function, and it just makes your design a little bit more symmetrical. It makes it easier than having to try and measure out perfectly, you know, where your design is. Another great function is the mirror function. Basically what that does, again, if we select these, it moves around your objects, and basically like you can switch places like that. You can switch up and down, left and right. So again, it's just an easier way to kind of mirror things, move things around, make your shapes nice and symmetrical, and keep, you know, put them where you want them, basically. Okay, so those are just a couple great features. Again, one of the best ways to learn Tinker-CAD is to just go on there, play around, get creative, and use your imagination, right? One more feature I want to show you before I actually show you how I designed my flute stand is the text feature. So right here we have all of the different letters, and we also have text, right? So when we click on that and drag and drop it to our plane, our text is going to pop up. Go down here, we can actually put in whatever text we want to put. So if we want to say hello, and then of course if that's too big, which it might be, then we can shrink that and make it a little smaller. The other thing you can do, because you might not have, you know, you might not just be like printing words out, but you could make your design, right? And then you could go in and add a text feature on top of the object. So let's say we want to just make this brick say hello. We're going to go ahead and change the color just so that it stands out a little bit more. And then we're going to raise this, right, so that it sits on top of the brick. We're going to put it right on top. We won't worry about making it perfect since we're not really going to print this. Now, when we group this together, right, like you saw me do earlier, you have a brick with the hello sticking out. You can also, so if we put this in a little bit deeper and kind of line it up, you can also turn the text function into the hole, right? So now instead of taking up that space, it's filling, or it's carving out the hole in the shape. Now when we group it together, now you have a hello that is dented into the object. So if you create your design and you kind of want to add a special touch, you can always add the text function. And that's super fun as well. You can also look on here. There's a bunch of really great stuff. There's also these like great characters. So this might be something that's more useful if you're thinking about like animating a scene. Then these are great. And that's also just fun to play around with and experiment. Okay, so now we know a little bit more about Tinker-CAD. Let's go in and I'm going to show you exactly how I made this flute stand. It might turn out to be a little bit different than this, but that's okay. I'm going to give you just like a general idea of what I did. So I started out with the cylinder. Okay, so you drag and drop that. I wanted my measurements to be a little bit precise because I wanted it to be a certain size. So I want it to be about, I think 4 by 1. Yeah, there we go, that looks good. And then the height of the outer cylinder let's do, well, let's shrink it a little bit and see. So yeah, let's do 1/2 inch. I'm gonna put 0.5, which is 1/2 inch. Looks pretty good. Now I need another cylinder, right? I'm kind of making a cross for my base there. So instead of going in and doing that exact thing, I'm just gonna copy paste. So if I copy paste this, I get the exact same shape. Okay, now I need it to intersect with my other one so that I have this like T shape. So what I'm gonna do is change the angle. So if I go in here and put 90 degrees, that's gonna go from this to this. Boom, perfect. All right, now I want them to intersect perfectly in the middle, right? Like I want it to be a perfect T. So instead of just guessing and like trying to move it there, I'm gonna use that alignment tool that I showed you guys earlier. So I select both of them, go up here to align, and then click on the middle, and there we go. Okay, so now they're aligned perfectly and I don't have to worry about just like guessing where that's gonna be. Okay, cool. So now you can tell on my Flute design, right? I have the very base rectangles, and then I have a little step on top so that it's a little more secure at the base there. So let's do that. So we're basically gonna do the same process here, but it's gonna be a little bit bigger. So this one, I'm just gonna kind of feel out what I want the size to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, maybe a little shorter. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, right? So copy paste that object. Then I'm gonna change the angle so that it's facing the other way. So change that to 90 degrees. And then let's see if we can align them like we just did. So you select the objects that you wanna align. And boom, there we go. So now these two are aligned, but it's not aligned with the base. So let's see if we select everything, select the whole object and align it. And there we go. Very cool. So now my whole object is symmetrical and it's looking a lot better. Not only is that going to make it look better, it's also going to make the design a little bit stronger, a little bit more sturdy. Because again, this is something that you actually want to be able to use. So it's good if it works and if it's actually sturdy, right? Okay, so now let's add the area where my flute is actually going to sit. I'm going to put this cylinder here. Again, we can use our alignment tool, so handy, to make sure that everything is symmetrical and that's right in the middle. Now I need to make this a little taller, right? I'm going to grab that top white button that controls the height, and let's go up to 3 inches. Little tall. Let's do 2.5, 2.5 inches. That looks better. Okay, so as you can tell on my design, I have kind of a wider tube here, and then I have a shorter tube at the top as well. So let's add that. Oops, let's add that shorter tube. So I need to change the dimensions of my circle. Right now it's 1 by 1. Let's try 0.5, which is 1/2 inch, right, by 0.5. Okay, now I need to raise the height of where that sits, right? So I'm going to use that black little cone at the top to raise it up and then move it so that it's sitting on top of my other cylinder. And in order to make sure that they are, aligned, right? I'm gonna go back and use that alignment tool one more time so that the smaller cylinder is sitting perfectly in the middle of that larger cylinder. Final step, basically, I'm gonna increase the size of that a little bit. And there we go. What do you guys think? Does it look pretty similar to this? Pretty good, right? Cool. All right, so that's just a really basic example of something that you can make. I'm sure that you guys will make something like so creative and so fun. And again, there's so many cool features on here. The best way is just go on there, play around. You can always go back and watch this webinar. So if you want to kind of see that tutorial again and see exactly how I made that, you can go back and watch it. You can also, on our YouTube channel, we have another Tinker-CAD tutorial. So you can watch that as well. It'll be really helpful. But those are kind of just the basics of building. And once you kind of get on there and play, you'll see, oh, this is actually really easy. Again, probably the most important features are turning the shapes into holes, which we have right here, right? Just remember that sort of gray diagonal line pattern means that something is a hole. The other really important thing is the group function. And then the other really important thing is the align function, which is going to help make your design nice and symmetrical. Okay, so now that I have my design, I'm happy with it. All the individual parts look good. I need to actually make this a solid object that I can go and then 3D print. So what I need to do is select, let me make sure I get everything. Select all the shapes, which I'm going to do again just by dragging my mouse across everything. And then we're going to go up to group. Okay, click that. Now you can see all those different components are grouped into one solid object. Very cool. Okay, the final step, which you guys need to see, because if you submit your design, then you're going to have to do this, is to download wrong button. Download the file so that you can send this to me, right? So if you go to export and then click STL, then it'll download the file on your computer. Then you'll be able to email that to me, and you're going to get all this information again after the webinar. You'll be able to email that to me, and I will actually go through and 3D print that for you. So make sure that you download that, download the STL file, and send that to me so that I can actually download it for you. But while you're here on Tinkercad, you can go ahead and take a picture. Whoops, my lights went out in here. You can take a picture or take a screenshot of your design and share it with us on Sci-Tech social media with the hashtag, hashtag Sci-Tech Cad Design. And again, you'll get all this information after the webinar in an email. So don't worry about remembering all that right now, but just so you know. So the cool thing about the 3D printer, right, is that we're going to bring your designs to life. How the STL file works, basically you'll send it to me. I'll go in and slice it, which means that I'm taking the STL file and turning it into something that the 3D printer can read and can actually print. And then from there, we'll figure out like how we can get your prints to you, and we can share them as well on our own social media so that everyone can see your super awesome designs and how great they are. Okay, so let me turn this off. Actually, yeah, here we go. Let's go back to here. So here's again that info on how you can share your files, and we'll send all of this to you so that you can see those examples as well, and so you can know exactly how to do it. Awesome. Alrighty, guys. So do we have any other questions about CAD design, or any questions about what you're thinking about designing or anything like that?